Well, I woke up this morning and checked the news and was disappointed to see that Putin has still not been assassinated. A growing number of people out there see this as the quick and obvious solution to the Ukraine invasion and indeed the world's problems. Lately, we have seen the tragic images of murdered civilians in places like Bucha, laying where they had been shot in the street or buried in mass graves. There is high likelihood of more such discoveries being made as more territory is recaptured by Ukrainian forces. Putin's authorities say these images are fake and have presented these images to the Russian people as fakes and provocation. Such is the evil way Putin is distorting the truth, and has shown as much talent for doing this as Hitler's Dr. Goebbels in World War II. These tragic images are shown to be true though, and not posed by satellite images showing these same bodies lying where they were left well before the Russian forces withdrew. There is even a video of the man lying beside his bicycle being shot by a Russian armoured vehicle. Thus, the Russian forces' medieval doctrine of terrorising citizens in blatant regard of international law to destroy morale is demonstrated, and yet Putin has the psychopathic cheek to call the government of Ukraine Nazis. As shown by the rage generated, morale has not been weakened as the Nazis found in World War II. It has only strengthened resolve. Russia has now been suspended from the United Nations Human Rights Council, but this is still not enough to save human lives. Putin has done a dummy split, of course, as threats and aggression is his modus operandi. So we have to stop this guy. With disappointment and great dissatisfaction, I see Western powers are still reacting to Putin and giving him the initiative, as they are trying to be polite and gentlemanly in order to deal, supposedly, with this murdering, psychopathic megalomaniac, with further sanctions and talk of taking him to the International Court for war crimes. They must realise that because of his psychopathy, he believes in his own infallibility, and he will just go on and on without regard to international courts or sanctions at all. Prosecution for war criminals takes far too much time, and the Ukrainian people need help now. They needed help at the beginning, but we failed them. The short answer is Putin's assassination as quickly as possible. The fears touted by the Western powers about Putin's threats to use nuclear weapons is negated by qualified opinion such as that given by Lieutenant General Ben Hodges on YouTube. But he and others who signed a document calling for the closing of the sky over Ukraine has been ignored, as it does not support the view of the American President, Joe Biden. This is politics, and perhaps some other reason involving money. But Joe Biden has had to try and boost his flagging popularity by bringing back the more popular Barack Obama to appear publicly with him. Shocking and unacceptable numbers of people have died in the most terrible of circumstances, and this will just go on unless something positive is done. As broached in my previous videos, this present invasion in Ukraine shows again the dangerous failure of our present world order, where we, as one species, live behind separate borders. The system has reached its use-by date. We have a planetary state of chaos, which is my political euphemism for saying that we are in a damn great mess. We have ongoing wars and hunger in a world of overproduction. Other so-called leaders like Putin are getting away with murder and genocide. Bashar al-Assad of Syria is still conducting genocide on his own people with Putin's assistance. The genocide carried out by the present military junta in Myanmar has been well documented in the media and is still going on. There is war in Yemen and other places, and the killing and destruction goes on, not only to fatten the profits of those manufacturing armaments, but also because of the diplomatic considerations that have to happen because we are living as separate nations. In a world of overproduction, people are starving, and the United Nations and other organisations have to plead for donations to help them. And we all know how effectively that is going. This is not a reflection on the good work and efforts of the United Nations, but this organisation was supposed to enable us to live in peace under the present world order of separate nations. But, as we have seen, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has been ignored in his pleas to Putin to withdraw from his invasion of Ukraine and ignored by the world in his pleas regarding climate change. Poorer nations have not had their infrastructure developed so that they can manufacture goods to trade with other nations, and so their people starve before our very eyes. Pitiful images and documentaries of children and people in their last throes as they starve to death. Yes, in today's world, we have to just sit and watch it. As well-known activists Greta Thunberg and Sir David Attenborough are constantly trying to tell us we have to do something positive right now about climate change before the changes become irreversible, if they haven't become so in some sectors already. But there is inertia in implementing this in spite of great public support, because the Illuminati, who have the money and successful businesses with the political influence, only have the short-term view of profit. They don't want any of this until their own backsides are in the fryer, and by then it will be too late. We have a pandemic to deal with, and resources like vaccines and knowledge and research are not evenly distributed throughout the planet. Hence the solution offered: one species, one government. This is urgently proposed. It will involve the retention of uncorrupted jurisprudence guaranteeing the right of the individual to air opinion, which is the cornerstone of true democracy. Admittedly, democracy has its problems, as there are some individuals who should not be listened to, but it is the best that we have at this time, and the majority usually see those with unsavoury opinion as such. Nationalism gives rise at times to the majority acceptance of unsavoury opinion within a particular country, which is why the concept of separate nations has reached its use-by date. We need protection from the sanctions on free speech present, for instance, on social media sites, where the rise in power of the moderator means that unnecessary restrictions are sometimes imposed. Jurisprudence was installed in our democratic system to guarantee the right of the individual to air opinion for consideration, instead of early democracies where people like Socrates were sentenced to drink hemlock because of the views he expressed. There is also some present archaeological research which suggests that Socrates was also made a scapegoat for Athens' loss in the war with Sparta. Socrates did not have the protection of jurisprudence. So how do we begin to go about building a system where we, as one species, want the common goal of wanting a safe future for us and our loved ones? This is what we share in common, no matter what government or regime we live under or what armed service we serve in. So the question can be posed, what are we fighting about? Good question. Einstein wrote, "As a citizen of Germany, I saw how excessive nationalism can spread like a disease, bringing tragedy to millions. To combat this disease, we have to eliminate nationalistic sentiments, first by instituting an international government with sovereignty over individual states." And this has to happen as a starting point for us all to begin. There are always doubters who say it can't be done, like those who doubted the SR-71 Blackbird spy plane could ever be built. So the makers started with the assumption that it could be done and finally worked through it all and achieved it. This has happened with many successful ideas, with adjustments made on the way as required. For the doubters, we already have the staff of the United Nations, who are well experienced in world affairs and geopolitics. But as observed by President Zelensky of Ukraine, it lacks teeth. With reorganisation, like for instance removing the veto power of members of the Security Council, or removal or a modification of the Council itself, it would yield a workable framework to build upon. In its present form, the UN, like its predecessor, the League of Nations, has shown itself to be impotent. This international government, along with retaining strong and uncorrupted jurisprudence, will retain powers over all armed world forces and police, so that individuals like Putin cannot use their military and police to progress their own selfish objectives. An international government can and must be built with the input of all of us, qualified and unqualified. It is no use waiting for present world leaders to have this epiphany and do it for us. That is something I can guarantee will not happen. The present Illuminati will not support such an idea and will actively oppose it, as it doesn't take care of their own selfish interests. Disruption always occurs when we make changes. But I make the point very strongly that the present disruption involving wars, displacement, genocide, starvation and climate change will only go on if we don't make a change. And as we fear, we will destroy ourselves as a race of beings. On social media, there have been many posts now which show that we have realised we need to be more accepting of each other's differences, as in a successful marriage. We have moved to accommodate those of various sexual orientations. So moving to accommodate other differences is well within our abilities. We are beginning to evolve into beings who will unite and make a world government work. We cooperate internationally on some projects already. To this end, I would like the constructive input of all, instead of your common gun control, which the majority have no trouble recognising. We are a talented species, with 9 different types of intelligence that have been identified so far. We have always come up with the ways and means to survive. The time to start is now. We are evolving. We are different now. Dying for king and country is increasingly not seen as a sensible move. Smoking and domestic violence is becoming unfashionable, along with class distinction. We are spending billions on constructing killing machines and other ways to kill each other while other people suffer starvation, displacement and death. Why don't we give peace a chance? And our brains as well. As a footnote, my Facebook page, Future for Humankind, may be partially or fully blocked by moderators who think that I should justify myself to them before I post politically orientated posts. Plus, as they constantly remind me, I can pay to boost my posts. We must be protected. Because of this, I also have a Wix site, willisjames7.wixsite.com/pax humankind. I'm also on YouTube under Future for Humankind with annotations for each subject matter. Good night.